Welcome back to Society Case Files. My name is Robert, and today I'm going to talk about the unusual state that Dune Awakening is in. If you like this kind of content and you want to see more, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Otherwise, I'm going to dive right in. Basically, what's going on right now is that Dune has reached a stage where it's been out for about 30 days, and a lot of people have reached the end game, specifically folks who played the heck out of it from the very beginning, from the 5-day head start, and in some cases, people who played the beta, so really knew what they were doing when they first started. And now they're at the very end, and they're struggling to find content. Now, this is a combination of people who don't really want to engage in PvP and those that do. Now, the problem is that PvP in its current state just doesn't really work. There's not a lot of incentive for engaging in it if it isn't what you really want to be doing. And those people that are, in a lot of ways, are kind of griefing because they're basically not getting that much out of the exchange. And when they are attacking people, especially individuals or small groups, they're finding that they're not prepared for a fight. So they're just annihilating them and wasting a lot of their time. Now, the people that might want to engage in this PvP are really going to find themselves doing so in vehicles, shooting at each other with rockets rather than engaging in hand-to-hand combat on the ground. In fact, I've seen people mention in chat, whoa, they attacked you on the ground and you got torn up? That's kind of crazy. So it's obvious that there is a better chance of survival for folks when they're fighting in the, with their avatar as opposed to their thopters. And more recently, the folks who make Dune have been attempting to correct some of this stuff. They're doing course corrections, but they're basically just knee-jerk reactions. They're things like, we're going to make half the deep desert into a PvE zone, but it's kind of pointless because, sure, you could fly around and do a few more things, but the real reason to be in the deep desert is to get those high-end tier 6 materials. Now, they do spawn. I have proven it out. I flew from one side to the other 3 times, and I managed to collect around 300 total titanium. That is not very much. You need tons to do anything at the end. Now, they did say that they would make it grindy. I get that. But making half the area PvE, but only basically 1.5 square capable of giving you those mats doesn't really help. Then they further made some changes where now when you flag for PvP, which still takes 5 seconds, to unflag it takes 30 seconds, which is kind of a gift to griefers, really, because you could very easily flag for PvP without even having the ability to turn around and escape it. There's control points out there that you could fly through, and before you even get from one side of it to the next, you're already in PvP, and then you're on your 30-second countdown. So that was another little knee-jerk thing that doesn't really work. Then you combine all of that with just straight-up mistakes and bugs, and you've got a state of game that is just not great. One of the bugs was the fact that you could be passing from the deep desert to the world map and find that just stuff in your inventory is gone. And that stuff could be anything from 500 units of spice melange to something you didn't even really notice you had. And this sort of unknown tariff it caused a lot of consternation. But nothing is quite as bad as the mistake they made where they moved a control point before the cycle. So they were supposed to have this control point moved to a place that would happen after the Coriolis storm. But it moved before the Coriolis storm, thus opening up a ton of bases to being raided. And while the people were offline figuring, hey, my base is perfectly safe, it's in a PvE area, a bunch of people went and raided it, took everything they had, totally ripped them off, destroyed the bases. It was pretty wild. And while it might seem like the best course of action might have been to roll back the server to ensure that everybody got their stuff back, while also fixing that control point, that's not what they chose to do. And in a lot of ways, that's kind of cool, because if you think about it, yeah, a lot of people were impacted by what happened on that sector in the deep desert. But rolling back the server would have impacted literally everyone. I didn't build a base there, so I would have lost basically 24 hours of progress along with everybody else who hasn't gone there. And imagine you're just a casual player who's been going through the beginning of the game, and all of a sudden you find that you have had all of your progress for a full day ruined. And maybe you only had a 5-hour time period to play because it was a day off or something. That would really suck. So I kind of see where they're coming from there, but it really does leave those folks who lost all that stuff in quite the lurch. Combine all of this with the fact that some of what I'm talking about comes from my own experience of getting ganked while I was flying around with an assault thopter. It seemed like it was a very quiet evening. I made a lot of mistakes. I take full responsibility for getting basically PvP'd. What it really tells you is that Funcom hasn't developed an idea of what PvP should be. They kind of wanted it to be this sort of thing where you'd fight in the ships because they're PvP, but there's hardly a reason to. There's just plenty of ships to go to. So if there's a bunch of players there and you just don't feel like risking them attacking you, you just go to another one to get the materials that are there. Maybe they thought that you would be out in the spice fields brawling in the middle of them, and there'd be massive guilds and everybody be on the ground and thopters flying overhead. And that vision sounds neat, but that's not how it played out, and that's rarely how things play out, really. In a lot of ways, when you have open PvP in an MMO situation, it really does start out with a lot of griefing and people just going around causing general mayhem until the developer decides, are we going to instance PvP? In other words, make battlegrounds and places where players can choose to go, because if you choose to go to those places, actively click something that allows you to join a specific server or event that is player versus player, then you are acknowledging that you are prepared for that and that whatever consequences come, you're going to be okay with. Whereas the way it is now, sure, you do have the choice of whether or not you flag, but only kind of. Because if you get too close to the PvP area, you're going to flag whether you want to or not, and you don't have enough time to get away from it. So eventually they're going to have to decide, do we want to have people playing the game who are doing the player versus environment stuff, that just want to build and have a good time doing that kind of thing, gather resources, get new stuff, experience new story as it comes out? Or do they want to cater more to the player versus player environment where people are going to basically make the game themselves and generate content by deciding that, oh, let's go raid so-and-so's base today or whatever? And if they do want that, then the deep desert needs to change a little bit, because right now, if you wanted to go raid someone's base, you're going to have to take a thopter. And if people know that that's happening, they're going to see you coming. And then it's going to turn into an aerial fight. It's rarely going to make it to the ground, in my opinion. I think most people will just duke it out in the air, and, one side or the other will win. And whoever does win, obviously, if it's not the defenders, then they're going to lose their base. So, it's not really about getting on the ground and using your skills. It's about who can afford to buy more rockets at this point. And that's why I think instanced PvP is probably a better plan in the long run, where you join a battleground. Maybe it looks like one of the Imperial test sites, and you run around in there and you secure objectives. Who knows what they're going to do or what they could do, but the sky's the limit. And it could be faction versus faction. So if you're a part of the Atreides, when you join your PvP, you're with other people who are part of that faction. And that way they can play into the story that they've developed. Because right now it's totally free-for-all. It doesn't matter if you're Atreides or Harkonnen, you're going to get attacked regardless. And, there's not any mercy out there. The folks that play are pretty much just brutal. So I think that they've got a lot to do there. Now, on the other hand, I've been on the Discord and I've been reading some people's opinions. And the PvP people are like, if you shrink PvP or make it fully optional, then the game will die. And I don't really see that, because if you're saying that, you're basically suggesting that you want to grief people. Because anybody who chooses to actively avoid PvP is not going to be a challenge. You're going to murk them big time. They're just going to die. So what's the point of having them there? Would you rather them just not play? And if you start kicking those people out, then your game dies and you don't have the content anymore because they don't have enough players. Now, that said, this game isn't subscription or anything, so it's not like they're making money on the players themselves. But one would assume that they want as many people playing as possible so that eventually they can put out some paid DLC or whatever else they have in mind. As for right now, they need to just figure out how to cater to folks. Now, at the same time, whether or not they need to do that quickly is kind of a matter of opinion, because I've got 180 plus hours in this game. I have played it far more than any single player game I've got in the last year and a half. Destiny 2 is one of the only games that I have more time in. And so in 30 days, just over 30 days, I've put in a ridiculous amount of time, and so have a lot of people. To expect that Funcom was prepared for us to locust the content this way is just crazy. And probably the biggest fault they have is doing the knee-jerk reactions rather than taking measured approaches. Rather than saying, hey, guys, we acknowledge that PvE is in a bad state. What we're going to do is we're just going to make it really hard to get those materials, but you could still get them in Haga Basin. Leave the deep desert alone. Continue to develop it and think through the best means to make that work the way you want. They obviously had a vision, but it didn't work out. So now they kind of need to go back to the drawing board rather than just throw new stuff at the wall and hope it sticks. Or, in this case, make dramatic changes that don't make anybody happy. Something else about the Deep Desert is that as much as a cool idea as it is, in my opinion, it also is just ridiculous how long you spend just gliding. Like, a good example is when I did my run to see how many materials I could get in the PvE zone of titanium, I basically flew from one side to the other with my glider on, and I wrote like 2 chapters of a book that I'm working on. Because I just start the glide, turn to my other computer, start writing, make sure I wasn't too low on the altitude, climb again, and do it again. I mean, it was nuts how long it takes. So there's just such a vast amount of emptiness in the deep desert. Obviously, it's a desert, so it shouldn't be the New York City of Dune. But at the same time, that vast stretch just makes it kind of interminable to just all you're doing is traveling. I think that kind of contributes to the sense of time wasted when, for instance, you get killed or you don't find anything or you pretty much leave empty-handed, or worse, you leave with some stuff and it just disappears. Just the sense of what you could have had, but because it was so freaking long to get around, you just find yourself kind of upset. Now, on the other hand, I saw people who were in the PvP saying, well, what would you even do if you had all the stuff? If you got to the tier 6, there's nothing else to do but PvP. And I mean, that's obviously not true. There's plenty of things to do. There's tons of those Imperial testing stations out there. Those are really cool dungeons. There's some exploration. There's caves. I'm not even going to go on and on. There's tons of stuff to do with your equipment. And while maybe you would get bored, maybe you'd take a break. But I mean, that's kind of okay considering that they have presented a lot of content. And if you chew through it all, as I have, then maybe it's okay if you take a little break while they develop some more stuff for you to do next time. And I mean, obviously, they're going to be working hard on it. They're trying to figure out how to make the lance rod better. Right now, it's kind of painful, in my opinion. They need to do a lot of work on that. And then maybe having daily and weekly events that are more accessible would help them out a lot. It would give you a lot to do. But I mean, when you think about it, they've only had a chance to work on this with a large group of people, the live community, for a very short time. I would also argue, and I've said this in a previous video, that they really need to find a way to incentivize people to test endgame more thoroughly. They need to find some way, all games, not just Dune, to really incentivize the types of people that can identify broken systems or systems that are going to need repair, and people that will be honest about it. Because obviously, if you find a system thing that you might be able to exploit and that sounds fun, then maybe you wouldn't tell anyone. So, I mean, I'm not accusing anyone of being like that, but I mean, it's possible. And so it'd just be nice if they really went at it. Like, for example, they shouldn't have had to do some of these knee-jerk things. These knee-jerk reactions should have happened during their stupid betas that they did, and they needed to extend them longer. Maybe they needed to put it in early access. They could have hammered out the deep desert then. But instead, they waited until live, and then once it's live and millions of people are playing, they start doing hot fixes. Either they introduced bugs or some bugs revealed themselves when certain thresholds were met, and then stuff just tumbled down around them. So for my part, as I was playing through the game, and I'm at, a point where it's very hard to level because the only thing to really do so is to go out and fight mobs or pick things up. And those are giving you a very small amount of experience. To get from level 170-ish to 200 is going to take a very long time. I saw someone say that when you get to level 182, you're basically halfway to 200 because the experience point requirement is just so freaking high. So with that in mind, I'm not like trying to rush around and do it. I've got a decent amount of spice because you can harvest it in Haga Basin. I've got some fair amount of the top tier stuff from titanium, so I can actually start making advanced fabricators now. Overall, I'm doing okay, but I still wanted to play the game. I just didn't really want to go flying around the deep desert, staring at open sand, praying that I might find one of the few nodes of titanium out there and, maybe go back with 150 after 2 hours of play. So what I decided to do was turn to the world of private servers. We've got 3 providers of them. We've got G-Portal, we've got Nitrado, and we've got X-Realms. If I said that middle one wrong, I really do apologize. Each of these has some advantages and disadvantages. Now, I've used G-Portal before for a Conan server and a V-Rising server, so I gravitated toward them. In fact, I would recommend them over the other options for a few reasons. So before I get into those reasons, let's first talk about the different kinds of worlds you could play on. There's Hardcore, which basically it is full PvP, and so there's just basically no safe place in the zone. Obviously, if you're renting the server, this is for you to regulate. If you're friends and you want to go around killing each other, then I guess hardcore might be the way to go. Sandstorms are active, taxation is active, and security zones are disabled, basically meaning that there's no place you could go that you won't be able to attack each other, save for basically the settlements. Then you've got PvPvE, which is pretty much the official server. Sandstorms are active, taxation active, security zones are active. So there's plenty of places that are PvE friendly. Then you've got roleplay, and it's basically the a place that you could decide if you want to turn off sandstorms or taxation. By default, taxation is disabled, so you don't have to pay for your bases, which is, kind of nice. I mean, there comes a time where money is not remotely an issue and paying those taxes is hardly a problem. So, whether or not disabling taxation is a huge benefit, who knows? Sandstorms are always annoying, but they're kind of fun too. They do give you a sense of danger and they can interrupt things. I think they're kind of essential. And of course, security zones are active. Then finally, you get free-for-all, which pretty much allows you to make your own choices, although you can with the other ones as well for the most part. That's up to you. But knowing that there's those different choices and that you can sort of pick and choose them leads to my next point about this. You are sharing the deep desert with other people who have done private servers. So Haga Basin is all yours. Nobody's going to be in there but you and the people you allow. But it does connect to a realm of deep desert instances that are occupied by people playing the same kind of world as you. This is why the stuff you're seeing on the screen here is from my first stream of when I did a private server that I actually have restarted, and I'm going to explain that in a moment too. The fact is that the only option at the time was a hardcore server. Well, I didn't really want to be on a hardcore server because I don't want to be in a deep desert that is hardcore. I was able to change that today to roleplay, and it's a brand new roleplay server, so there's only 2 sieges involved, which is kind of nice. That means that if I could get to the deep desert quickly enough, there'd probably be like 2 people there, and you'd be able to roam around and do what you want without being murdered. But that's kind of the thing. So with G Portal, you can actually pick your world if they're available. Yesterday, they weren't. All that was available was hardcore. But today, all of the options were available. With X Realms, it's a similar price point, but you don't get to pick. They just automatically assign you to whatever world's available, which means you could get hardcore, you could get PvPvE, who knows? And then with the Nitrado, that is just a more expensive experience all around, and they also just assign you to a world. Now, why is it more expensive? Only because they require you to put 24 slots. In other words, 24 players can connect to the server at the same time, whereas G Portal and X Realms both allow 6, which is cheaper as far as what you're spending, but it ends up costing more. So it's like $2 per slot if you get 6, and with Nitrado, you're spending just over $1. Now, that is to say, you would definitely need a lot of friends to make $30 a month for a server worth it. For me, I'm paying like $12 a month, and I might have a few friends play. But I mean, you need to know a lot of people to get the most out of that. And if you want to divide up the money, everybody's going to pitch in. What happens when one guy's like, hey, a new Assassin's Creed came out and I'm out for a while. I'm not playing for a couple months and I'm not paying for it. Now the burden falls to other people, and you kind of become a bill collector for your friends over a game. That just seems lame. So, I mean, ultimately, one person is going to want to be responsible for paying for the server. And while Nitrado may have fantastic infrastructure and it might work really, really well, for me, I only needed 6. Heck, I could have gone with less. But honestly, the people who I played with or had the potential to play with, they're probably not going to want to restart. They're way high level, and so was I, to be honest. Which leads me back to what I was going to say before, is that starting over again, I have to say that I really remember why I love this game. Not that I don't love this game when I was playing the high-end stuff, but it just wasn't quite as much fun as what I've been doing, which is effectively starting from scratch, but knowing everything I know, which allows me to sort of fly through the content a little bit more and not make the same mistakes. And that's just been kind of entertaining. If you want to see the first 4 hours of that, which is basically me doing the introductory zone and establishing a base in the next section of the map, that is available in my live section on the channel. And basically, I just haul butt through it so you can kind of see what it was like. Now, today, as of recording this video, I did change the world, which forced me to start over again. But this time I did it even faster because I remembered everything that I even made a mistake on the first 2 times. But regardless, I thought I could experience it a little different. For example, I went Atreides on the official server. I decided to go Harkonnen on this one to see what the story is like there. And I just know how to stockpile better. I just know a lot more. And it's been really entertaining. So I'm not suggesting you do that. Not a lot of people have the time to do that kind of thing, to basically just decide to start over after playing a game for as long as I have. But I have found that it really did get me back in touch with why I like the game and got me excited to continue playing it. It also gives Funcom a chance, at least for me, to find some solutions for what they're doing with the game, to fix some stuff with the deep desert, to provide a better PvE experience, maybe release some more content, maybe clean up some of the bugs, offer up some better systems that we can engage with. Obviously, I could take a break as well, and that might happen. I might not really be able to go too much further with the with my fresh playthrough, if you will, because there might come a moment where I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot that horrible grind from X to Z was just nasty, and I don't want to do it again. I'm not sure, but we'll see. I do plan on doing a couple more streams to show off some early gameplay from somebody who has played way too much. It does move pretty fast because You know, I've played enough to where I'm like looting and taking the blood and doing all this other stuff at the same time. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. The real point here is that just after 30 days, there have been some bumpy roads. But to be perfectly fair, and I think we need to be, up until the end game stuff, the Dune Awakening was fantastic and was just it was an amazing experience. So for them to drop the ball a little bit with the Deep Desert, or a lot, depending on who you are, it makes sense. And I'm also not going to begrudge them. You know, I'm not going on their Discord, going off on them. I am providing feedback. I've done some things like updated the wiki. I've tried to be involved a little bit, see if I can provide some assistance here and there, and maybe throw out the feedback from what I've experienced just because I've played so much. You know, I don't know if it's going to help. Probably not. They probably don't care. But whatever the case, I think the game has a pretty amazing future. I mean, Conan Exiles was nothing like this. It was not remotely as good as Dune Awakening was out the gate. And after just a short year, Conan Exile had already been improved dramatically. And by the time it was nearing its end, it was a really great game with tons of really interesting systems to engage in and lots of cool stuff that they added. I have no doubt in my mind that Dune will receive the same treatment. Where they're going to get the money, I don't know. How much DLC stuff is going to cost, I don't know. Are they going to release it at an appropriate cadence to keep people engaged? I don't know. One of the problems with them not doing it is that maintaining bases costs resources and requires you to log in every so often if you want to keep a base, as opposed to break everything down and, you know, build something small each time. You've got to go and refuel your generators or whatever you use. You've got to provide taxation payments and all kinds of stuff just so your base isn't wiped out. And it makes perfect sense. If you're not actively playing, you probably shouldn't have a big base in the middle of nowhere, because then nobody else can build there. But that said, if you're just waiting for new content, you're only taking a break because there's nothing to do, then that's kind of annoying to have this basic chore that you've got to like set a timer for every 2 weeks or whatever, just so that you can maintain your stuff, hoping the developer develops something new soon enough for you to engage with. So I don't know what they're going to do. I know that they are currently occupied with trying to fix things. So I don't think that future-facing cool stuff is a priority, at least at the moment. I'm sure they've got a team working on that kind of thing, but they are not getting the attention that the let's fix it now guys are. So anyway, that's enough from me today. What do you guys think? Have you played Dune a lot? Are you a casual player? Where do you think the game is? Do you think that PvP is cool? Do you think it's kind of a mess? I'd love to hear. Let me know in the comments. But this is Robert with Society Case Files signing off.